Hello, welcome to Vineyard KC West podcast. For more information, visit us at vineyardkcwest.com.
We are in the midst of a series about Moses. So we're going through the Old Testament book of Exodus. And so in the series, we're looking at a person, God working in that person's life. And then what we're doing is we're looking at then God working in the life of a people, which are the Israelites. And then ultimately, you know that Jesus Christ, Savior of the world, comes through those people. Okay, so important to know. Now, throughout the series, we're seeing Moses transition his identity from his circumstances to his relationship with God. That's important, right? We don't want to have our identity with the ups and downs of life. We want it with our relationship with God. So last week, Nathan shared a great message on how God moves us from the idea of prize, whether things from God or things from the world, like moving from prize to presence, like letting it be about God's presence. And really talked about how those things don't satisfy, that there's really only one thing that satisfies, which is God's presence alone. I really liked where he said, you know, like all the doubts and stuff there, like just that knowing, just like pushing in going after. That's really the only thing. Not striving in a bad way, but that's really the only thing that we should really like go hard after. Like when you really like, I'm going to go hard after this. And you say, well, wait a minute, what about goals and everything else? Trust me, I got it. Like I'm driven, I get that. But I'm saying our primary vocation should be seeking after the face of God. And so I love what he shared there. So today, we're continuing our series with going from reaction to reliance. So the idea of reaction in reliance, let me share it this way. This is the time of year I mostly watch baseball, is when the playoffs start. And amazing thing, our team from San Diego, where we're from, actually got to the playoffs, and they won the first round, and they got to the next one. So it's exciting to see. And the reason they got in is they always start really well, like in the season. Their first half of the season, they always do really well. Well, they only had half a season, right? So they got in and they did it. So it was great. But they were in there. And so I was thinking about like when I played baseball. I played from the time I was 4 until I was about 14, 15 years old, freshman year of high school. And the reason I stopped playing baseball is I couldn't hit a curve. I just saw like that's representative of things. The skill set and the devotion that you had to have to do it at a high level, at that level, was just beyond what I had. And so reaction or reliance. So my coaches would coach me, and the reaction, I couldn't get over my reaction with a curveball. Because, right, it's coming in, and I'm saying it's going to hit me. And no, they told me that it's not going to hit me. So just stand in there. Right. Okay, no, just swing now. And so all the other things. And the mechanics of it is you're supposed to actually hold back, kind of drop your hands. Okay, and if it was a fastball, you're stepping quick, but no, wait, and I couldn't do it. So reliance would be to rely upon the information that my coaches had given me, and I know to be true. And they said, oh, it's the sweetest if you hit a curveball. You just jack it for a home run. And I couldn't get over it. So I always just kept reacting. And so hence the end of my baseball career. So reacting is all about living out of spur-of-the-moment emotions. Like what you're feeling right then rules the day. Now, reaction can be good too, but we're talking about negative reaction. Like if somebody's coming to hurt you or your family and you react with, judo moves or karate or whatever, right? That's good, right? Or if somebody pulls out in front of you and you react by hitting the brakes, that's good. But we're talking about making little investments in major areas of our lives where it creates a destiny in those areas that we really don't want. Now, relying is all about living out of your informed preparation. So relying is informed preparation. My coaches informed me so I could rely upon the preparation, but I didn't rely upon it. And here's why. This is how some of us live our lives. Our informed preparation is that we're going to react. Like when that happens, I'm just going to react. I remember that when I was younger in relationships and with people. It's just like, man, if they say that, I'm just going to do this. And in the moment, like as you're doing it, there's this feeling of like, this feels really good, but I know this is really stupid. Like this is like really dumb right now. I'm blowing up this relationship, or I'm blowing up my job with this person, and it ends up really having that effect. So some people's informed preparation is like, man, if somebody does this to me, it's over or it's on. And I'm not going to take that. Like, that's their informed preparation. So they're always living out of this reaction with whatever happens to them. Because there's this idea of a crucial conversation. And the idea with crucial conversations is that you're in it before you know it. By the time you realize it's a crucial conversation, your emotions and everything within you is hijacking you. And at that point, you have to be able to use informed preparation. Otherwise, it's a yard sale, right? Relationally and job-wise or whatever else. So think of some areas that we may react in. Physical health or personal health. So diet, exercise, or mental health, right? Our mental health is similar to, many times, to our physical health. Like, in other words, little small choices actually add up. And so if you're reactionary, in other words, like, hey, I'm just going to eat what I want, whatever I feel like, right? You'll get the results of that. Or I feel like working out, or I don't feel like working out, or I feel like exercising, or I don't. That's reacting versus an informed opinion like, hey, I don't have to be like a marathon runner, or I don't have to be a triathlon person, or I don't have to work out all day and be a CrossFit or like have the perfect body. But I do know that they say that it's good if you walk 30 minutes a day and eat healthy somewhat, and those things. And I'm going to end up, being healthy in life, right? Like, that's an informed preparation. Then there's financial health, right? Like, financial health is basically the idea that the choices if you make choices financially for now, then you're not going to be wealthy. If you make financial decisions based upon 10, 20 years from now, you'll end up wealthy, even if you don't make that much money. That it's just based upon the laws of money and those things. Relationships, right? Like, so you can, if you base it on always feelings, well, you could catch somebody on a bad day. Your boss or your spouse or your friend or your parents. And if you're always going off of your reaction, that's going to be bad news. Or your career or business, right? Same thing. Make decisions based upon 10, 20 years from now, not how you feel today. They don't appreciate me, or they don't have this, or I'm terrible at my job, or those things. You may feel like that often. I know I do, right? But if you don't make the decisions based upon those times. And then also, what about spiritual decisions, right? We don't want to make decisions based upon that too. So today, let's hear how we can move towards reliance, right? Instead of reaction in some of these areas. So like all of the themes that we've been going through with Moses, it's a cycle, okay? So none of the themes we've gone through, like you arrive, okay? Like, you're not going to arrive at reliance, okay? It's going to be a cycle that you go through, okay? And Moses is a pretty amazing guy, and just like us, you get lessons about reliance or reaction when you're squeezed, right? So when you squeeze something, what comes out is what's in them, right? And sometimes we get off base and we go back into reaction, and then we know it's a test. And God will allow us to get in those situations to be able to deal with that. So Moses was an amazing guy, but he was a work in progress like the rest of us. So we're going to be reading out of Exodus 34, verse 29. And so if you have a Bible or Bible app, and we'll start in verse 39, and we'll kind of see this amazing scene of Moses. It's one of the really most interesting passages in all of Scripture, because we look at it as a religious thing way back then, but think about now. Like, think about this kind of stuff now. It's so interesting. So let's read about Moses. This is like the high point where he's getting the fruit of what he's done, and this is like the really good time, and we'll go into some other stuff too. So verse 29, it says, "When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant, because he had spoken with the Lord." So you guys, his face is shining. How cool is that, right? His face is shining. And it's not like he put glitter on it, that kind of thing, but his face is shining, because how did God say that he met with Moses? We read it last week in verse 11 of 33, that God would meet with Moses like one meets with a friend. And for that time, it was just like, wow, this is amazing that God would do that. Well, guess what? We live in a time where God meets with everybody face to face. There's not one person that God won't meet with face to face, because heaven is wide open because of Jesus Christ. By what Jesus did on the cross, heaven is absolutely wide open. That's one of the biggest things that people don't understand, I think, is like, well, I got to do this, I got to do this. No, the only thing is you got to link up with Jesus. Lock arms with Jesus, walk arm in arm, and he's like, hey, Dad, meet my friend, right? And what does God do? Welcome with open arms, absolute open arms. Verse 30, it says, when Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. Right? I mean, if you saw your buddy, you hadn't seen him in a while, and he's walking around and his face is glowing, you'd kind of be like, what are we doing here? And it's not Halloween or something else going on. But Moses called to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. So Moses would have been really vogue today, right? Look at all you guys, right? You got the veil over your face, right? And so in verse 34, it says, but whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, they saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord. So what we see here, this term is called the Shekinah glory, okay? And so I remember when I heard that, I'm like, all right, that is so cool, the Shekinah glory. And so the Shekinah glory is a visual manifestation of God on earth. So we saw that with the Israelites. How did God lead the Israelites through the desert? Well, a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. That was Shekinah glory as well, that we saw this visual manifestation of God. The burning bush, right, would be Shekinah glory, right? But that was actually, an angel, which we think it was also a Christophany, right, where a pre-incarnate showing up of Jesus. So in other words, before he became a human, Jesus, the Son of God, was there speaking with Moses. And so Moses was receiving the first fruits of his requests of God. Remember the passage last week? Moses made some requests of God. He was bold about choosing God's presence. In verse 13 last week, he said, teach me your ways to God so I may know you and continue to find favor with you. So he's getting the fruits of this, okay? Verse 15, he said to God, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. So here's what you need to know. If you want your prayers answered, like if you want a prayer answered that you're going to bat 1,000 on this prayer like every time, is ask God for more of his presence. Ask him for more of his presence and then look for it. Ask him for more of him and then look for him. And so Moses is bearing the fruit of that because he asked for it and now he's getting it. And then in verse 18, he says, now show me your glory. So God's like, not only am I going to show you my glory, but I'm going to let my glory shine from your face, right? And isn't that true when we spend time with God and we're alone with God? It shows. It shows in our lives. We may not have a glowing face, okay? But realize that Moses' thing wasn't actually outward. See, it was an outward appearance of an inward work of what's going on. See, it wasn't just like the God said, well, I'm going to touch your face. No, Moses had been meeting with God, and so the real person, Moses, which was on the inside of this tent, was meeting with God, and that was showing through what God was doing on the inside. So we get fooled when we think that it's all about the outside of things. And so what I really like, though, is Moses is intentional, right? Like, I mean, he's meeting with God face to face. He's with him, and his face is shining, and he's sharing his commands with people. But we don't let it pass us that it's intentional. Because Moses asked for these things. And God was willing because God was actually the one instigating. Okay? But I like the intentionality because the thing about intentional is goals. You see, intentionality to means that I have a goal. It's just not kind of like all over the place. Like there's a saying like most people shoot for nothing and then they hit it every time. Right? It's true. But when it comes to goals, it's pretty amazing when you set a goal. There's actually a Harvard study several years ago, and there's many findings from it, but one interesting fact that they learned about goals was that if you just write a goal down, like you have a goal, you have a 40% greater chance of accomplishing that goal than if you just didn't write it down. Just write this thing down, you've got a 40% greater chance. And then if you actually keep that in front of you and then like review it and like make some objectives out of it and kind of go after it, I mean, astronomically, it goes way up that you can accomplish that goal. And so Moses had these goals of being with God and went after it and he got it. So goals are all about doing actions that will result in getting you to your goal. Because many of us, we do actions that are different than our true goals. Because it's hard. Like life is hard and accomplishing goals are hard. And so we may have all sorts of ideas of what we want. Like for me, I was a single guy living in Carlsbad, California, near the beach. You know, tough life. But what I wanted more than anything is I wanted a wife, and I wanted kids, and all my friends were married, and I wasn't that old. I was in my early 20s, but I wanted that, and so I would walk the streets at night, just kind of take walks with the Lord and talk to Him, and I remember I'm just like, Lord, would you bless me, and then I met Michelle like shortly after that, and she started working at the church where I was a youth pastor. And she was an assistant for one of the pastors. And so we started talking and had kind of pseudo dates where we would go to Costco and shop and meet around the copier. And I was bivocational, so at that time, and I was a stockbroker by day, so I'd come in looking sharp, and I'd find some ministry reason to come into the office, and there was this girl, Stephanie, one of our friends, and she was working there all the time, and she'd sit there and she's like, he came in again, and so it was fun. And so we kind of did that for a couple of months, talking and stuff and that sort of thing. But the whole idea in the office it was a really large church, so lots of staff, and they're kind of like, what is going on here? The whole idea was like they were like, when is he going to ask her out? Like, when is this going to happen here? And so I remember the day, and finally I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and I went there, and her car was there, but she wasn't there. Like, man. Well, she had gone to the grocery store just around the corner, and all of a sudden, when I was about to leave, there she was getting her car. I'm like, oh no, now I have to do it. But I remember everything in the moment because I said, what I want is I'm interested in this woman, and I'm going to do the actions that it takes to have what I think I want. And so I said, I was thinking that if you would want to have dinner with me. And no joke, she kind of like did this, she said, I would love that. So she kind of like hopped a little bit. I'm like, yes, all right. And so that resulted in, like, we celebrated 21 years of marriage on Friday. So we had lunch and went to a football game in the evening, with our kids. But pseudo dating wouldn't have had that same result. Like, if I hadn't done what it would take to get that result, I wouldn't have that. Because the things of God are powerful, and the work of God in our lives are powerful. And what God does, most of it is by His power joining up with us. But it's not automatism. So it's not like automatic. I give my life to Jesus, and you're like, sweet, all right. Like, when do they, like, you ever have like a course meal at a place? You're like a 5-course meal. Okay, you get done with the one thing, get done with the second. All right, what do they bring in next? Listen, that's not how it is with God. It's not this thing you just press a button and it is. He wants you to participate with Him. He wants you to be intentional with Him. And so he will bring you blessings because he is an affectionate, loving father, that he is creative in the way that he loves you and he adores you. He will bring things to you that you didn't think of or you knew you need or wanted. But most of the things that he has, when people say, man, God has this and God does this, he wants you to participate and join him in that. And so Moses took actions that would result in the goal of knowing and relying upon God. But remember, though, not all smelled good as roses with Moses, okay? This is important, okay? And so Moses also paid the price of reacting. He paid the price of reacting. So there was two events. They're about 70 to 80 years apart that he had. There's other ones, too, where he reacted, but here's a couple of good ones. So it's important because the first 5 books of the Bible, they call it the Pentateuch. So Penta, right? So 5. And so the Pentateuch, these are the books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, okay? So Genesis is all about beginnings of the people of God, beginnings of creation, right? The forming of these people. And you walk in through. Exodus is actually just about 1 year. Like this whole book is just 1 year of the rescuing of the people of God from Egypt all the way through through that 1 year. And so it's action-packed, what we're going through, okay? And then Leviticus is sacrificial laws. So if you really want some good reading, go to Leviticus. And I mean, it is graphic. It is graphic. You go through, and it makes you appreciate what Jesus did. Because Leviticus, the whole book is about like going through all of these ways that you're to do sacrifices and the different offerings that you do, so that you can be right with God. And yet Jesus did it once for all. Jesus laid down his life for all so that all may be forgiven. It never needs to be done again, that sacrifice. We trust in that. And when we sin, we ask for forgiveness. But we trust in that and get on that lifeboat. Now, Numbers is 38 years of wandering in the wilderness. So you've got the 1 year, right? Exodus. And then Numbers is 38 years wandering in the wilderness because they didn't have faith to enter into the promised land. Okay? They said, oh, there's giants in the land. But it's the land that God said. It was like he said, but they said there's giants. And then Deuteronomy is the last year of the wilderness. And so that's the Pentateuch, the 5 books. The reason I'm telling you this is that these 2 things happen within there. One of them happens within Numbers. The first one happens in Exodus 2. So we actually had Season teach us that week. We had a video from our friends at Vineyard North. And so we saw Moses feel his calling, right? And he's like, I'm the man. I'm God's deliverer for his people. And so what does a deliverer do? Well, he protects them, and he ends up killing a guy on his first day on the job. That's a pretty bad first day. His second day on the job, he shows up, and all of his coworkers, the fellow Hebrews, want nothing to do with him. So he bails to the desert. Okay? Why did all that happen? He reacted. He reacted upon the moment instead of his informed preparation, which is if he had asked God, like, hey, how do I do this deliverer thing? Like, you've been around quite a while. Like, how should I do this? What should I do? He didn't rely upon that. He just reacted. He just went into it. And the second happening is in Numbers chapter 20. And this is again, it's near the end of their time in the desert of all this time, but they started complaining again. And they said, why'd you bring us out here? And we're going to die here. And what's happening? So we need water. Well, in chapter 17, God had Moses strike a rock with his staff, and water came out of the rock for these millions of people. Okay, there's pictures of a rock right around where they were traveling that split. It's huge. It's up on a cliff, and the place would have been perfect for them to have water for them and their flocks. But now they need water again. They're traveling. They don't have any water. They're upset. So God says, well, what do you want us to do? God says, I want you to go and speak to this rock over here. So what Moses does instead is Moses goes and he yells at the people and he says, man, how long do we have to be with you? And I mean, do I have to get water for you again? And do I have to do this for you again? You ungrateful people. And just, he chews them out. And what he does instead of speaking to the rock is he strikes the rock twice with his staff. And so what he ends up doing is he misrepresents God. And just so you know, like the prayer, one bat 1,000, God answers that. God doesn't like to be misrepresented, especially by the people that he puts in authority to care for and love his people. He doesn't like to be misrepresented. And so actually, here's what happens. This is what God says to them in Numbers 20, verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, yes, the brothers, together, because you did not trust in me. So God says it's a belief problem, right? So he didn't rely. Trust is relying. Because you didn't trust in me, okay, believe in me, rely upon me, you reacted instead. He says this, enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. Whoa. So Moses' whole identity of being, it wasn't just about rescue, it was about delivering them to this land. Now God says, you two, come to the principal's office. You guys will not bring the people into the land. And there's this beautiful scene in Deuteronomy where Moses is actually looking up high and he's looking over into the promised land. And so God gave that to him and he said, well done. I mean, there was this well done, I'm proud of you, but God just said, look, this can't follow through. So there was consequences for Moses and Aaron misrepresenting God. I mean, you get it. I mean, you may have been like this. I have been like this at times, where like the kids ask for something, maybe they're little or whatever, and basically the kids are asking for water. Okay? Now they're complaining and stuff, which is hard, but maybe kids ask for something simple and it's like you unload with like this whole convoluted response and it's all over the place and the kids are just looking like, I just asked for a glass of water, right? And all of a sudden in the moment you're like, ah. Well, Moses, remember, represented God. So anything that happened and any miracle that happened, plus Moses kind of took on half of the stuff. Like, do we have to do this miracle for you again? And so he took it on like me and God, we're going to help you out with this. And so God's not really into that, and Moses reacts. And it goes bad. The consequences are big. I remember my senior year of high school in football. And I worked real hard, and I think most sports in high school, that's the big year, football and senior year and stuff. I mean, not just football, any sport you play, it's like senior year is a big year because you're at your strongest, you've been working hard, you know your position and you know what you're doing. And so I was doing pretty well, and then we were kind of in just kind of right before the season started, and there was a moment where I felt pressure for some other players, and I was in there and I was just battling, and then all of a sudden my coach, pulls me out. And so, I unloaded on him, on my coach. And, and used the wrong words too. And there was deep consequences. They were actually riding pretty high on me and pretty happy with me. But I reacted in the moment with my feelings because I felt it slipping away. Right? At that moment, like, oh, they just took me out. And then I reacted. And I'm sitting there and then I'm battling. I'm like, why am I not getting the playing time that I want? This is my senior year, blah, blah, blah. And I know I've worked hard and I know I'm good enough, all these things. And I know I'm right. And then all of a sudden I asked, like a few games in, I said, hey, coach, what can I do to get better? And then it kind of, then I dug deeper and it was kind of like, yeah, he's like, I forgive you, but you blew it. Like the coaches looked on and they're like, hey, this kid, we can't have that. And so there was deep consequences for that, and ended up doing some good things that season and stuff, but it wasn't what I dreamed of. And so I'm over it now, but looking back, it was good for me to learn that we can actually change everything in a moment if we react out of feelings. That's why it's so important to have a reliance that we have informed preparation on. So at their root, reaction is taking God out of the equation. Right? It's this thing that I have to do it. I have to carry the load. I have to make something happen. And it's doing it in the moment, on my feelings, on my emotions alone. It's taking God out of the equation. Reliance is welcoming God into every area of my life. Welcoming him into absolutely anything. Like I heard this guy say this when I was in my early 20s, and I adopted it afterwards. When I first saw it, I'm like, and I'm like, I kind of like that. So when I wash my face or when I shave, when I'm done with the water, I baptize myself. Say, I'm baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And it helps me center in on who I am and what I'm all about. And so that's one way that I invite God into my entire life, right? And then, it doesn't matter what's happening. I try to say, Lord, would you come and be here? Or Lord, would you help with this? Or I'm not getting this. And then I pray that for others, God, would you be in this situation? In those things, inviting God into every area of life. So remember, one of these areas may have stood out to you when we were talking earlier as areas that you react in, okay? Because remember, reaction, one, can have a big consequence. But the way it actually works is you will change your life, your destiny, by little reactions that add up. Like for instance, like if you have negative reaction, negative interaction with your spouse or with your business partner or with other employees or with your neighbors, and not positive interactions, you actually need 4 positive interactions with people to unbalance one. So like if you're a parent today and you're sitting there like, man, I only have negative interactions with my kids, you're building something. Or if you're here today and your relationship with your loved one or it's like, and you look and you're like, man, we have like 4 negative to 1 positive. You're building something over that. And so it's true, you build something. And it's all for all areas. So here's the areas that we brought up at the beginning. And the Lord probably highlighted one of these to you that it popped out. Like, man, I don't know that I'm really relying upon the Lord in that. And so, the first one was physical and mental health, like God has in his word, like he lays out how to have physical and mental health, right? Like one of the scriptures I loved for a long time was, in Proverbs, it says, honey is sweet, but, if you have too much, it's bad for the stomach or it turns sour and it's, that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, that's cool scripture, as I eat my candy, I'm like, and then I'm like, oh, I get it. Like you're telling me something about my diet here, Lord, and there's other ones in the New Testament. There's the extreme, like where Paul says, hey, physical activity is good, but here, this is more important here. And so there's a balance of that. And so physical health. I also realized something just in the past few years that I like to process things verbally. And so I would speak kind of maybe some of the battles or circumstances I was in. And as I'm thinking them through, and I would say, well, I feel better. Like I've kind of sorted that out. Okay. But then what I realize is like, no, I just spoke that junk into like my environment. I just spoke that here, and I actually gave it more traction in my life, even though it's a thing that I just want to change and go away. So what I've started to do is when I'm thinking of stuff or whatever, I'm just like, I'll just pray. I'm just like, that thing needs to go away, that needs to change. And what I've realized is that I don't speak about it and like help other people hear the lame stuff that I'm having to deal with, whatever, it helps not only me, and it's not as big a deal, but it also doesn't, slime other people as well. I mean, I share when I need to and ask for wisdom in those things, but you guys get what I'm saying. And then there's financial health. Like God lays out finances. So if you look and say, well, gosh, in my finances, I just react. I know for me, like when I was young, that's what I did. In my teens, I started working when I was 13 at a deli and worked in restaurants and all kinds of other jobs. And so I've been working since I'm 13. Okay. And I don't know that I've taken more than 2 weeks off, since, now I'm in my 40s. But, financially, I would find, well, I'm working, I'm making plenty of money, but where is it? Well, I realized, like God says in his word, he says, that the borrower is always slave to the lender. And so if I'm borrowing all kinds of money to get a car, or my favorite was get a sound system for my car, or have this or that or whatever, and it doesn't fit in with that budget, well then I'm making the money, but I'm paying somebody else, right? It's not adding up. So the borrower is slave to the lender, God says. I mean, that's a key thing. So, there's something called compounding interest. You either help, benefit from it or somebody else does. And you can really get forward when you're benefiting from your money, not the other person. And then, so that's a principle. So if you look at your financial health and say, well, I work hard, I make decent money or the money that I need, but I just seem never get ahead financially. Well, there's another piece of that too, which is giving. God actually lays that out too. And he says, look, this is what you're to do with your money as far as giving. So there's like the idea of tithe, which is 10%, right? And it's actually through lots of different cultures, but God says, hey, give me 10% of your income, your first fruits, right? And so Malachi 3:10, it says this in the Old Testament, it says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. In other words, he's saying, like, you're not bringing the whole 10% in, you're holding back, that there may be food in my house. So test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room enough for it. And so if you look at your finances, there's the thing. Am I giving my interest and I'm borrowing from other people more than what I can afford? Or am I not allowing God to be my provider? Because when you give, when you tithe, okay, you're trusting God as your provider. It's saying, God, I trust you. I trust you. Number one, everything I have is from you, and I give to you. That's something that changed too in my early 20s as well, is I would just kind of give here and there, but it was just kind of haphazardly. Like it was a reaction. Oh, they're passing the thing again, or they got the offering box. But then it was like, when Michelle and I met, it was like we decided. We said, we're always going to give 10% of our income or more. And so for 21 years, we've always given at least 10% or more to the local church, to people when they need it and those things. And where it says, test me and see if I will not throw open the floodgates. We experience all sorts of provision and all kinds of blessings and things because we're in his economy. But if I'm tight-fisted, then I don't experience God's economy. He shows blessings in those things. But so that's a financial thing. Are we relying upon God, or are we reacting with our finances? And then the other thing, relationships, like, is God in your most important relationships? If you've got employee relationships or employer relationships, welcome God at your workplace. Or if in your home, your marriage, with your kids, welcome God into those relationships and you'll see it change. Here's this, and this doesn't cost you any more today. Just this is, you take this and a quarter and you get a cup of soup, okay? You will be happy. Listen, if you have a problem with somebody, any relationship today, whoever's coming to mind, like in other words, you're not getting along with them, things aren't going well. If you want to see things drastically change, just real quickly, start to pray for them. And not like, get them, Lord, okay? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, pray for them. Pray for them. And here's the interesting thing. They may not change right away, but God will give you his heart for them. And you will change and possibly be the person that can help them change if needed. Then there's career or business. We talked about it a little bit. And then spiritually too, as far as those areas. So lastly, Hebrews 11:6 says this. It says, and without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So look where it says, Hebrews 11:6, believe that he exists. So remember, what is reaction? It's taking God out of the equation. So it's I believe that God exists. Well, I believe that God exists in my physical and mental health. I believe that God exists in my finances. I believe that God exists in my relationships, my business, all of those things. We believe that he exists there. Well, then what happens? Well, he rewards those who seek him. So first, the reward is God. Okay? You get God when you seek him. That's what you get him. And then when you get God, you do life with him. And you're with all of these areas, you're doing that with him. And you get to do things his way instead of your own way. Because there's not great mysteries about most of the things in the problems that we have today. There's actually not great mysteries. They're not great conundrums. God has communicated very clearly about the laws of relationships, the laws of money, the laws of our bodies and health and mental health and physical health. He's communicated. They're not conundrums. The thing that needs to be done is we do it his way. I'm going to do it your way. I found this out when, and we'll have Nikki and you guys come back up. When I was in high school, I just battled my dad. I just battled him. It was just me and him and my brother for a while. And I just battled him on everything, all the way to like how you did dishes. You know, like he would say, and he's very specific. He was a Marine Corps officer and a cowboy and businessman, all this stuff, right? But he was just very specific. And so I think he's showing me how to put the dishes and wash the dishes. We don't have a dishwasher this way, but he's actually showing me how to load a mortar shell, right? Okay, for artillery. This is what's going on here. He's like, if you don't do this, you're going to get hurt. Well, I'm doing this, and I just rebelled against everything with him. I wouldn't listen to him and those things. But then I will tell you, when I moved out on my own, I went back to my dad's. I'm like, hey, how'd you do that again with the dishes and the thing? Because that system really worked. And I've done that over and over for many years. Is I've gone back to him like, Dad, how did you do that? When we did that, and I told you didn't know, and it was, I started to do it my dad's way on a lot of things, and I realized it was really good. Well, God speaks to us too, you guys. Speaks to us, and he says, hey, would you do this my way? Like, that's what I have. I have blessing for you. It's not to hold back things from us. It's actually to bless us so that we get it the best.
Thanks for listening this week. If you're looking for ways to serve, give, or get connected, please visit vineyardkcwest.com.